Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatva Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Pranaya Karunya Gana Ganata Praptasya Kalyana Gurunana Vasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Praptasya Kalyana Gurunana Vasya Vande Guru Shri Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vaditramadhyam Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu Vaditramadhyam Manasura Sena Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Romanchakam Vande Guru Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shingaratanama Viramajanadu Shri Vigrahara Juktasya bhaktamsya niyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavad Prasado Satvana Truptan Hari Bhakta Sangha Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavad Prasado Satvana Truptan Hari Bhakta Sangha Kridvaiva Trupti Bhajato Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Kridvaiva Trupti Bhajato Shadeva Shiradhikama Bhavayara Param Madhurya Leela Gunarupanamnam Shiradhikama Bhavayara Param Madhurya Leela Gunarupanamnam Pratikshana Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Ne Kunjayuno Ratikeli Siddhai Jayali Bhir Juktir Apekshaniya Nikunjayuno Tatratidacha Otivalavasya Bande Guru Shri Charanoro Vrindam Tatratidacha Otivalavasya Bande Guru Sakshadharitena Shamasta Shashre Rukta Tatava Yataiva Sadhavi Sakshadharitena Shamasta Shashre Rukta Tatava Pinto Prabodja Priya Eva Tasya Vande Gorashi Charanoro Vrinda Pinto Prabodha Vande Gorashi Charanoro Sya Prasada Bhagavad Prasada Yasya Prasadan Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasada Bhagavad Prasada Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutapi Yayam Stuvam Tasya Yasatrin Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanoro Vindam Jaya Vande Guru Shri Vande Guru Shri Charanoro Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanoro Vrindam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Utale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunnavadi Pachatari Sata Dine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Sunyavadi Pachatari Sata Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Chaitanya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Yaraya Namah, Krishna Jadavaya Namah, Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah, Gopal Govindaram Shrimadusudam, Giridhari Gopina Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavad-Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhakta Raghunam, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasara Guna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo, Nitai Gaura Haribo, Haribo, Nitai Gaura. Jai Om Vishnu Paramahansa Prabhupada Suttara Saraswati Shimaji Divine Grace Abhocharvina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Pratishta Vividhi Samstapakacharya Vaishnava Shiromani Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patita Udhara Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Namachari Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrindi Ki Jai प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। जी परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय। प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जनक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिनंदन श्रीमन गौरांग चैतन्य महाप्रभु गुरु हरि मावर अवतार की जय। गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरिनाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की जय। जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। Prihat Nidanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopagopna Radha Kun Samakun Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Brajabhim Vrindavan Mathurdham Ki Jai. The Lordship Shri Radha Nila Madhava Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Navadvip Eka Chakradham Ki Jai. Parama Karuna Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. Shri Purushottama Ketra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Smaspadra Devi Sudarshan Chakra Prabhupada Ki Jai. Bhakti Sarva Vigna Vinashana Krishna Hare Bhagavan Ki Jai. Sitaram Lakshman Bhakta Hanuman Ji Ki Jai. Jaganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulasi Maharani Vrindi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Mathura Dharani Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai. Nitai Gauradi Pramanande. All glories to the Samara Gauris. All glories to the Samara Gauris. All glories to the Samara Gauris. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Pela dela dadaine. Pela dela dadaine. Hiranyakasi purvasaha. Hiranyakasi Silatanka nakalaye.
Silatanka nakalaye.
Ito narshima parato narshima.
Ito nisingi.
Yato yato yami tato narshima. Bahir Narshima, Hirade Narshima. Narasimha Madhim Sharanam Parpade. नरसिंहमदिं शरणं पर्पदे
नरसिंहमदि शरणं पर्पदे
तव कर कमलवरे नाकाम अद्भुत सिंहा दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृङ्गा केशवधीरता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे
तव कर कमल नाकाम अद्भुत सिंहा
केशवधीरता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे
जय केशवधीरता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश
जयो लक्ष्मी नरसिंहा जयो लक्ष्मी नरसिंहा लक्ष्मी नरसिंहा जयो लक्ष्मी नरसिंहा
जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह लक्ष्मी नरसिंह
जयो भक्त प्रहलाद भक्त प्रहलाद भक्त प्रहलाद जयो भक्त प्रहलाद जयो जयो प्रभुपाद 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 जयो जयो प्रभुपाद
जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद
जयो जयो गुरुदेव 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 जयो जयो गुरुदेव
जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव
लक्ष्मी नरसिम्हादेव भगवान की जय प्रहलाद महाराज की जय और प्रमाण दे
वृंदाये तुलसी रेवाये प्रियाये केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादिदेवी सतवताये नमो नमः वृंदाये तुलसी रेवाये प्रियाये केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादिदेवी सतवताये नमो नमः वृंदाये तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादिदेवी सतवताये नमो नमः श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय।
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो अभिलाषी
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो अभिलाषी
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो
जे तो मार शरण लो तारा वंच पूर्ण होए
जे तो मार शरण लो तारा वंच पूर्ण होए
कृपा कोरी करो तारे वृंदावनवासी कृपा
करे करो तारे वृंदावनवासी
मोरा अभिलाष विलास कुंजे दियो बा युगल रूपरासी এই নিবেদন ধর সখীরানুগত করো নিবেদন ধর সখীরানুগত করো সেবাধিকার দিয়ে করো নিজ দাসী সেবাধিকার দিয়ে করো নিজ দাসী দীন কৃষ্ণ দাস কোয়ে নমো রহো দীন श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदाए नवासी श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदाए नवासी श्री राधा गोविंदा तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः यानि घानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Vrinda Devi 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 Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Vrinda Devi Tulsi Maharani ki jai
Shri Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namo Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namo Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Srimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has wishes fulfilled. Bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Kavadams of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always sing in love Shri Shri Radha and Govinda. Shri Mati Dursa Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sri Krishna Ki Jai. Namo Mahabharanaya Krishna Premi Pradayate Krishna. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large. God is spreads the rays in the benediction moon. It is the life of transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we always are anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. And thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There is not even a hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lowered on straw in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotion of save his birth out of birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, somehow or other I am fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, Or will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? Or will my voice choke up? Or will the hairs on my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? Oh Govinda, feeling your separation, I'm considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he should remain so. Even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me, he's completely free to do anything and everything, for he's always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri 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 Shastakam Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that must be avoided. They are as follows. 1. Blasphemy. Devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. Consider the names of the demigods, the Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, to be equal to independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. Blaspheme the Vedic literature or rules and pursuits of Vedic. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation of the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit simple activities on strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which offer Vedas as fruitive activity, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the fatherless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting of the holy names and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It's also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success, Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like Yasayata Vayaritarata Chati Savigyaswara Brahma Udaya Adhikavayemu Jantija Suraya Tejo Varimrida Jatavinimayo Jatra Trisagumusya
Damna Srina Sita Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
Damna Swena Sada Nirastakuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
All-pervading personality of Godhead.
Offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
Offer my respectful obeisance unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute
and the
truth.
primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
The creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes.
For the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there's no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahmaji.
The original living being.
The original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation
of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
Water seen on fire, land seen.
Only because of him do the material universes,
Only because of him do the material universes,
temporarily manifested by reaction to the three modes of nature,
temporarily manifested by the reaction to three modes of nature,
appear factual although they are unreal.
appear factual, although they are
I
unreal.
therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri
who is
Krishna,
eternally existent in a transcendental abode,
who is eternally existent in the transcendental
which is
world,
forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representation of material
I
world.
meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute
Dharma projita, kaitravota,
Dharma Pujita Ketavata,
Paramo Nimatsaranam Satam.
Paramo Nirmasaranam Satam.
Vedyam Vastavam Atra Vastu.
Vidyam Vastavam Astra Vastu.
Shivadam Tapa Trayon Bhuvanam.
Shivadam Tapu Trayamanam.
Shrimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite.
Shrimad Bhagavate Maham.
Kim va Parir Ishvaraha.
Diva Paris.
Sadyo Hridi Avarudyate Tra.
Sadyo Ruddhya Varujatitra.
Krite Bihi Sususabistakshanat.
V2B Shushubhitatyanat.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are material
This
motivated.
Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth,
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in
which
heart.
is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the whole world.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the twofold misery.
This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity,
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by Krishna Consciousness in its maturity
is sufficient in itself for God realization.
is sufficient itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need with the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
by this message, here's the message of Bhagavad, by this culture of knowledge,
by this culture of knowledge,
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
as a purpose established within his heart.
Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam,
Nigama Kapatoro Gaitam Thoram.
sukhamukad amrita dravya samyutam,
Pibata
pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam, muhur aho raska bhuvibhavakaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire to Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Shishukadeva Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Although its nectarine juice was already relishable for all,
Although its nectarine juice was already relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna,
Shravantam Swakata Krishna,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Hidyantakstohi Apadrani,
Vidyantastohya Bhadra,
Vidunati Srit Satam.
Vidunoti Suhit
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from Vedic
or
literature,
to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad-Gita,
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
is itself righteous activity.
is a self-righteous act.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
And for one who hears about
Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna,
acts as a best wishing friend
access to the rest of
and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
the devotee who constantly engage in hearing with him.
Nasta presu abhadresu
Nasta Praishwa Bhadrishu,
nityam bhagavata sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Seva,
bhagavati uttamasloke
Bhagavati Uttam Sloka,
bhaktir bhavati naistaki. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
This way the devotee naturally develops dormant transcendental.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the
and
devotees,
from the devotees,
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in devotional service.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Darajastamo Bhava,
kamalobodayasche
Amalovadayasti,
cheta etaranavidam stitvam sattve prasidati. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
free from the mode of passion,
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
and this material lust and avarice are
Evam prasana manaso Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam Mukta Sangasya Jayate. When these impurities are wiped away,
when his impurities are wiped,
the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in position,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened with devotional
and understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the sense of God.
Vidyate Hridaya Grantis Chidyante Sarva Samsaya Siyante Chasya Karmani Just Evatmanishware. Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram, understanding of the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead.
understanding the supreme absolute true personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotees in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 19, Text 26. Tam dvayastavarsam sukumara pada
Tam dvastavarshan sukumarapada
karorubhav amsakapolagatram
karo rubhavan sakapolagatram
charva yatak son nasatulya karna
Charvaya taksho nasatulya karna
subrev ananam kambu sujata kantam.
Suvridanantam kambu sujata katam.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. This son of Vyasadeva was only 16 years old. His legs, hands, thighs, arms, forehead, and the other parts of his body were all delicately formed. His eyes were beautifully wide, and his nose and ears were highly raised. He had a very attractive face, and his neck was well formed and beautiful, like a conch shell. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. A respectable personality is described beginning with the legs, and this honored system is observed here with Sukadeva Goswami. He was only 16 years of age. A person is honored for his achievements and not for advanced age. A person can be older by experience and not by age. Sri Sukadeva Goswami, who is described herein as the son of Vyasadeva, was by his knowledge more experienced than all the sages present there, although he was only 16 years old. So we'll go on to the next two verses. Niguda Jatrum Pritatunga Vakshasam
Niguda jatrum pritutunga vakshasam
Avartanabhim Valival Gudaram Cha
avatanablim valival gudaram cha
Digambaram Vakta Vikirna Kesam
digambaram vraktra viktina cham
Pralamba Bahum Swamarutamabam.
pralamba bahun swamarutamabham.
Translation. His collarbone was fleshy, his chest broad and thick, his navel deep, and his abdomen beautifully striped. His arms were long, and curly hair was strewn over his beautiful face. He was naked, and the hue of his body reflected that of Lord Krishna. Purport by His Divine Grace, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. His bodily features indicate him to be different from common men. All the signs described in connection with the bodily features of Sukadeva Goswami are uncommon symptoms, typical of great personalities according to physiognomical calculations. His bodily hue resembled that of Lord Krishna, who is the supreme among the gods, demigods, and all living beings. So we'll go on to the next verse also. Shamam sadapi vyavayo nagalakshmya
Samam sadapi vyavyayo ngalakshamya
strinam anugyam ruchira smitena
shinam anogyan ruchira simitina
pratyutitaste munaya swasanebhyas
pratyutitaste munaya swanevya
talakshanagya apiguda varchasam.
talakyanagya apigudavachasam.
Translation. He was blackish and very beautiful due to his youth. Because of the glamour of his body and his attractive smiles, He was pleasing to women. Though he tried to cover his natural glories, the great sages present there were all expert in the art of physiognomy, and so they honored him by rising from their seats. And we'll go on to the next one also. Savishnurato titaya agataya
Savishnurato titaya agataya
tasmai saparyam shirasa jahara
Tasmai saparyam shirasa jahara
tato nirvitahi abhudashriyo ribaka
Tato nivritta yabudha sriyorbaka
mahasane sopavive sapujita.
Mahasameso pavishesha pujita.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Maharaja Parikshit, who is also known as Vishnurata, one who is always protected by Vishnu, bowed his head to receive the chief guest, Sukadeva Goswami. At that time, all the ignorant women and boys ceased following Srila Sukadeva. Receiving respect from all, Sukadeva Goswami took his exalted seat. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. On Sukadeva Goswami's arrival at the meeting, everyone except Srila Vyasadeva, Narada, and a few others stood up. And Maharaj Parikshit, who was glad to receive a great devotee of the Lord, bowed down before him with all the limbs of his body. Sukadeva Goswami also exchanged the greetings and reception by embrace, shaking of hands, nodding, and bowing down, especially before his father and Narada Muni. Thus he was offered the presidential seat at the meeting. When he was so received by the kings and sages, the street boys and less intelligent women who followed him were struck with wonder and fear. So they retired from their frivolous activities, and everything was full of gravity and calm. So, because Sukadeva Goswami was naked and walking towards the meeting of the devotees, he passed through many villages, and a group of women, silly women, and young boys were following him, basically mocking him, making fun of him, thinking he was crazy. But when he came to the assembly of all these very august sages, the silly women and the disrespectful boys suddenly realized that this was not a place for them, not in such an assembly, and they retreated, they went away. That means that to recognize a genuine pure devotee may be very difficult for some people, especially those engaged in sense gratification and silliness and illicit activities. It's impossible, almost impossible for them to recognize a pure devotee. And what were these symptoms of Sukadeva Goswami, apart from the fact that he was walking around naked? So he was also referred to as Bhagavan, and that's interesting because we usually think that only Krishna is Bhagavan. Well, he's the supreme Bhagavan, that no one is equal to or greater. But other exalted personalities are sometimes referred to as Bhagavan, such as Lord Shiva and others. And then some rascals also preempt that name for themselves, like so-called Bhagavan Rajneesh or Bhagavan Nityananda or Bhagavan this or Bhagavan that. That, of course, is a wrong, usurped title for these rascals. But in this case, if we understand what the word Bhagavan means, it's actually very significant. First of all, there's the three syllables Bhagavan. So this Ba means a maintainer or guardian, and Ga means a leader or a creator, and Van means and Va means that is the dwelling place. In other words, everything is within him, and he is within everything. So, who can have all those qualities? Therefore, there are some persons like Shiva or Brahma or others that can have partially some of those qualities, but Krishna has them in full. No one can equal him or be greater than him. Therefore, when it's in the full sense, Bhagavan means infinite knowledge, potency, energy, opulence, strength, and influence. In other words, he has all these things completely. He has all wealth, all beauty, all fame, all knowledge, all power, all renunciation. So therefore, when Bhagavan is referring to Krishna, there's no one equal to or greater than him. He is without anyone comparable, including Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma. Okay, so there was something about Sukadeva Goswami which was very interesting. That was he was completely self-satisfied. Now, to be completely self-satisfied is something exceptional, because the symptom of the material world is that most people are never satisfied, no matter what they have. So this is explained more deeply in the Bhagavad-Gita, 6th chapter, 24th verse, beginning with the 24th verse. And these verses are very important to understand the nature of a person who's self-satisfied. So it says, one should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with determination and faith, and not be deviated from the path. One should abandon, without exception, all material desires born of mental speculation, and thus control all the senses on all sides by the mind. Well, this is not only referring to a yogi, but it can also refer to a devotee. Sincere yogis will eventually become pure devotees also. So, Prabhupada explains, the yoga practitioner should be determined and should patiently prosecute the practice without deviation. One should be sure of success at the end and pursue this course with great perseverance, not becoming discouraged if there is any delay in the attainment of success. Success is sure for the rigid practitioner. Regarding Bhakti Yoga, Rupa Goswami says, Utsaha nishchaya darya tatat karma pravartana. Sangatyagat sato vrite sadvir bhakti prasidati. One can execute the process of Bhakti Yoga successfully with full-hearted enthusiasm, perseverance, and determination by following the prescribed duties in the association of devotees and by engaging completely in the activities of goodness. That's Upadekshamrita, verse number 3. So then Prabhupada continues, as for determination, one should follow the example of the sparrow who lost her eggs in the waves of the ocean. A sparrow laid her eggs on the shore of the ocean, but the big ocean carried away eggs on its waves. The sparrow became very upset and asked the ocean to return her eggs. The ocean did not even consider her appeal. So the sparrow, which is a very small bird, decided to dry up the ocean. She began to pick out the water in her small beak, and everyone laughed at her for her impossible determination. The news of her activity spread, and at last Garuda, the gigantic bird carrier of Lord Vishnu, heard it. He became compassionate toward his small sister bird, and so he came to see the sparrow. Garuda was very pleased by the determination of the small sparrow, and he promised to help. Thus Garuda at once asked the ocean to return her eggs, lest he himself take up the work of the sparrow. The ocean was frightened at this and returned the eggs. Thus the sparrow became happy by the grace of Garuda. Similarly, the practice of yoga, especially bhakti yoga in Krishna consciousness, may appear to be a very difficult job, but if anyone follows the principles with great determination, the Lord will surely help, for God helps those who help themselves. Nice verse and nice purport. God helps those who help themselves. So, this is beginning to explain what it means to be self-satisfied. Then again it says, gradually, step by step, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence, sustained by full conviction, and thus the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should think of nothing else. And then in purport, Prabhupada says, by proper conviction and intelligence. Conviction means you're convinced that some sublime principle is true. What is the sublime principle? Well, it is God helps those who help themselves. That if we follow the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness strictly and without fail, then our success is guaranteed in Krishna consciousness. So that means that eventually our mind, our intelligence, our senses, our body, everything will be used in the service of Krishna without deviation. And at that point, Krishna reveals knowledge to us. This is revelation theology. And Krishna will help us avoid falling down. And even if we do fall down, Krishna will help us correct ourselves by honesty and humility and so forth. And so it says by proper conviction, being convinced of something sublime, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's in the heart of every living entity, and he is the well-wisher of his devotees and protector. Then, by proper conviction and intelligence, one should gradually cease sense activities. That means sense gratification. You can't stop using the senses, but you don't use them for self-gratification. This is called pratyahara. In other words, gradually cease sense activities. The mind being controlled by conviction, meditation, and cessation from the senses should be situated in trance or samadhi. So the yogis do this through the meditative method. The devotees meditate by chanting Hare Krishna reverently and constantly thinking and knowing that Krishna and his holy name are non-different. So, and therefore they don't use their senses for sense gratification. They only use them to please the Lord. At that time, there is no longer any danger of becoming engaged in the material conception of life. In other words, although one is involved with matter, as long as the material body exists, one should not think about sense gratification. One should think of no pleasure aside from the pleasure of the Supreme Self. This state is easily attained by directly practicing Krishna consciousness. That's exactly what we're teaching in the temple. Directly practicing Krishna consciousness by making offerings to the Lord, by chanting the holy names of the Lord, by hearing about the glories of the Lord in classes, and also by preaching the glories of the Lord to others, distributing prasadam, and giving all sorts of opportunities to other people to become Krishna conscious. And then, from wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. Just like the tortoise. When the tortoise is in danger, it retracts all its legs and arms and head and everything into its shell. And therefore, it's very difficult for predators to hurt the turtle. So, in the same way, we should withdraw the senses and the mind and intelligence from any so-called attractive evocation of sense gratification. One who controls the mind, and therefore the senses as well, is called Goswami or Swami, and one who is controlled by the mind is called Godasa, or the servant of the senses. A Goswami knows the standard of sense happiness. In transcendental sense happiness, the senses are engaged in the service of Hrishikesha, or the supreme owner of the senses, Krishna. Serving Krishna with purified senses is called Krishna Consciousness. That is the way of bringing the senses under full control. What is more, that is the highest perfection of yoga practice. And then it says, the yogi whose mind is fixed on me verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. He is beyond the mode of passion. He realizes his qualitative identity with the Supreme, and thus he is freed from all reactions to past deeds. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, Brahma Bhuta is the state of being free from material contamination and situated in the transcendental service of the Lord. Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param, Srimad Bhagavad-Gita 1854. One cannot remain in the quality of Brahman, the Absolute, until one's mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord. Savai Manak Krishna Padara Vindayo. To be always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, or to remain in Krishna consciousness, is to be factually liberated from the mode of passion and all material contamination. The next verse, thus the self-controlled yogi, constantly engaged in yoga practice, becomes free from all material contamination and achieves the highest stage of perfect happiness in transcendental loving service to the Lord. And Prabhupada writes, self-realization means knowing one's constitutional position in relationship to the Supreme. Well, our constitutional position is Jivera Swarupahaya Krishnera Nityadas, we're the eternal servant of the Lord. And that's the activity that we should be engaged in with firm determination and perseverance. So therefore, it says, the individual soul is part and parcel of the Supreme, and its position is to render transcendental service to the Lord. This transcendental contact with the Supreme is called Brahma Samsparsa. And then it says, a true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere. Now, this is a very sublime verse. It says, a Krishna-conscious yogi is the perfect seer because he sees Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, situated in everyone's heart as a supersoul, Paramatma. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hridese rijuna tistati. The Lord, in his Paramatma feature, is situated within both the heart of the dog and that of a Brahmana. The perfect yogi knows that the Lord is eternally transcendental and is not materially affected by his presence in either a dog or a Brahmana. That is the supreme neutrality of the Lord. In other words, he's neutral. He treats everyone equally. He's not prejudiced in any way because he sees that Krishna is in the heart of the enemy and in the heart of the friend. That is the supreme neutrality of the Lord. The individual soul is also situated in the individual heart, but he's not present in all hearts. That is the distinction between the individual soul and the supersoul. So, your soul, my soul, is only present in this body. My soul is not present in your body, your soul is not present in my body. But Krishna is present in every body. One who is not factually in the practice of yoga cannot see so clearly. A Krishna conscious person can see Krishna in the heart of both the believer and the non-believer. In the Smriti, this is confirmed as follows. Atat tatvach chamatritvach cha atma hi paramo hari. The Lord, being the source of all beings, is like the mother and the maintainer. As the mother is neutral to all different kinds of children, the Supreme Father or Mother is also. Consequently, the Supersoul is always in every living being. Outwardly, also, every living being is situated in the energy of the Lord. As will be explained in the 7th chapter, the Lord has primarily two energies, the spiritual or superior and the material or inferior. The living entity, although part of the superior energy, is conditioned by the inferior energy. The living entity is always in the Lord's energy. Every living entity is situated in him in one way or another. The yogi sees equally because he sees that all living entities, although in different situations according to the results of fruitive work, in all circumstances remain the servants of God. While in the material energy, the living entity serves the material senses, and while in spiritual energy, he serves the Supreme Lord directly. In either case, the living entity is the servant of God. This vision of equality is perfect in a person in Krishna consciousness. So here we have an explanation of neutrality and equality, which are a more advanced stage than Brahmabhuta, Prasanatma, Nasochati Nakangsati. No more hankering, no more lamentation, no more hankering. Samaksarve Subhutesu, one is equal to all living entities. So that's equality. He sees that everyone is a part and parcel of Krishna, the friend and the enemy. And neutrality, one is not disturbed by any situation in the material world, good or bad. So, therefore, then the next verse is a famous verse, Yomam Pasyati Sarvatra Sarvam Cha Mai Pasyati Tasyaham Cha Na Pranasyami Sachame Na Pranasyati. This means, for one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. So a person in Krishna consciousness certainly sees Lord Krishna everywhere, and he sees everything in Krishna. Such a person may appear to see all separate manifestations of the material nature, but in each and every instance he is conscious of Krishna, knowing that everything is a manifestation of Krishna's energy. Nothing can exist without Krishna, and Krishna is the Lord of everything. This is the basic principle of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is the development of love of Krishna, a position transcendental even to material liberation. At this stage of Krishna consciousness beyond self-realization, the devotee becomes one with Krishna in the sense that Krishna becomes everything for the devotee, and the devotee becomes full in loving Krishna. An intimate relationship between the Lord and the devotee then exists. In that stage, the living entity can never be annihilated, nor is the personality of Godhead ever out of the sight of the devotee. To merge in Krishna is spiritual annihilation. A devotee takes no such risk. And it's stated in Brahma Samhita, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santak Sadeva Hidayesu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship the primeval Lord Govinda, who is always seen by the devotee whose eyes are anointed with the pulp of love. He is seen in his eternal form of Shamsundar, situated within the heart of the devotee. At this stage, Lord Krishna never disappears from the sight of the devotee, nor does the devotee ever lose sight of the Lord. In the case of a yogi who sees the Lord as Paramatma within the heart, the same applies. Such a yogi turns into a pure devotee and cannot bear to live for a moment without seeing the Lord within himself. So, all these verses, 6th chapter, 24th verse to the 32nd verse, explains the position of a self-satisfied devotee. And that was the case of Sukadeva Goswami. So therefore, then it says, such a yogi who engages in the worshipful service of the Supersoul, knowing that I and the Supersoul are one, meaning Krishna and the Supersoul are one, remains always in me in all circumstances. In the purport, a yogi who's practicing meditation on the Supersoul sees within himself the plenary portion of Krishna as Vishnu, with 4 hands, holding conch shell, wheel, club, and lotus flower. The yogi should know that Vishnu is not different from Krishna. Krishna in this form of Supersoul is situated in everyone's heart. Furthermore, there is no difference between the innumerable Supersouls present in the innumerable hearts of living entities, nor is there a difference between a Krishna-conscious person always engaged in the transcendental loving service of Krishna and a perfect yogi engaged in meditation on the Supersoul. The yogi in Krishna consciousness, even though he may be engaged in various activities while in material existence, remains always situated in Krishna. So this means that the practitioners of Patanjali Yoga, their ultimate goal is to see the Supersoul. And if they see the Supersoul and don't think that's them, but they understand that this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they become devotees. And the devotee in Krishna consciousness sees Krishna everywhere, knowing that the Supersoul is present, or Krishna is present in the heart of every living entity. So one attains that vision by cutting off all attachments to the material world and remaining in a state of samadhi through meditation. And the other, the devotee, attains the same situation by using everything correctly in the service of Krishna and meditating on Krishna all the time as the summum bonum, personality of Godhead, and understanding that Krishna is in the heart of every living entity. So they both can attain the same perfection if they are self-satisfied, as we describe. So it says, nor is there a difference between a Krishna-conscious person always engaged in the transcendental loving service of Krishna and a perfect yogi engaged in meditation on the Supersoul. The yogi in Krishna consciousness, even though he may be engaged in various activities while in material existence, remains always situated in Krishna. This is confirmed in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-187 of Srila Rupa Goswami, Nikhilasva Piyavastasu, Jivan Muktasu Uchyate. A devotee of the Lord, always acting in Krishna consciousness, is automatically liberated. In the Narada Pancharatra, this is confirmed in this way. Di kaladi anavachine Krishne cheto vidayacha tanmayo bhavati shripam jivo brahmani yojayet. By concentrating one's attention on the transcendental form of Krishna, who is all-pervading God, who is all-pervading and beyond time and space, one becomes absorbed in thinking of Krishna and then attains the happy state of transcendental association with him. Krishna consciousness is the highest stage of trance in yoga practice. This very understanding that Krishna is present as Paramatma in everyone's heart makes the yogi faultless. The Vedas, Gopalatapani Upanishad 1.21, confirms this inconceivable potency of the Lord as follows. Eko pisan bahudayo vabhati. Although the Lord is one, he is present in innumerable hearts as many. Similarly, in the Smriti Shastra, he says, Eka eva paro Vishnu sarva vyapi na samsaya. Aishvaryat rupam ekam cha suryavat bahudeyate. Vishnu is one, and yet he is certainly all-pervading. By his inconceivable potency, in spite of his one form, He is present everywhere, as the sun appears in many places at once. Okay, so this is an explanation of a self-satisfied person like Sukadeva Goswami. And it's very important to understand this. We can all attain this situation. Just like it says, Bahunam Janmanamante Gyanavam Papadyante Vasudeva Saramiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. After many, many births of striving to understand Krishna through speculation or through other means, one eventually arrives at the understanding, Vasudeva Sarvamiti, O Krishna, you are everything. And this is explained when Srila Prabhupada was corresponding with Professor Stahl, a so-called professor of Vedic knowledge in the University of California, Berkeley. I think it was, I don't know if it was Berkeley, but the University of California. Srila Prabhupada claimed that all of his disciples, who were strictly following the intense program of Krishna consciousness, were in fact Sudurlabha Mahatmas, who were, in other words, rare Mahatmas, right? Who were seeing Vasudeva Sarvam, Krishna as everything. In other words, if one is constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness with an intense desire to please the Lord and one day gain his association, it is to be understood that in one's life there is nothing but Krishna. Let me read that again because it's an extremely important point. If one is constantly engaged, and see, it doesn't mean that a person says, oh, I'm seeing Krishna all the time. No. It's different than that. If one is constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness with an intense desire to please the Lord and one day gain his association, it is to be understood that in one's life there is nothing but Krishna. So there's a difference between a person who said, I saw Krishna last night. So who said that? That was so-called Paramahansa Yogananda. If you read his book, The Autobiography of a Yogi, which is a very famous book, many people read it, he says that in, I think it was 1930s, he was in a hotel in Mumbai, and Krishna appeared to him on the windowsill of his room. You see. So he's claiming that he actually saw Krishna. But actually, real devotees, they're always striving to see Krishna and anticipating to see Krishna. They have an intense desire to please the Lord, and they're always engaged in his service. If one is constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness with an intense desire to please the Lord, and one day gain his association, it is to be understood that in one's life there is nothing but Krishna. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has warned us, however, that a mere theoretical or academic understanding that Krishna is everything does not qualify one as a first-class devotee. One must actually have developed love for Krishna. Therefore, it can be practically understood that anyone who enthusiastically adopts the Krishna consciousness program and eagerly participates in the preaching activities of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is acting on the platform of a Madhyama Adhikari devotee. When such a devotee becomes overwhelmed by his desire to serve Krishna and associate with the Lord, so much so that he is not attracted to anything else within the universe, he should be understood to be an Uttama Adhikari Vaishnava as mentioned. So, this is a more, let's say, deeper understanding of that verse, Bahunam Janmanamante Jnanavam Prapadyante. So in other words, anyone who enthusiastically adopts Krishna consciousness program and eagerly participates in the preaching activities of the International Society of Krishna Consciousness is acting on the platform of a Madhyama Adhikari devotee. When such a devotee becomes overwhelmed by his desire to serve Krishna and associate with the Lord, so much so that he is not attracted by anything else within the universe, he should be understood to be a Uttama Adhikari Vaishnava as mentioned in this verse. That is who Sukadeva Goswami is. He's an Uttama Adhikari And therefore, he has no opprobrium. In other words, he's not in any way intimidated or embarrassed by people making fun of him or even spitting on him, because he's so enamored by Krishna. Nothing can disturb his deep, let's say, dedication and meditation on the Lord. And therefore he walks right into the assembly of the sages. He's nude. He gives proper respect to all the great sages according to their position and his position. And then he sits down and he's ready to speak Srimad Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit. So this is a special thing. Therefore, that is the position of a self-satisfied devotee. Nothing can make them waver from the strong determination to always serve Krishna and to spread the glories of the Lord. Okay, we'll stop right there. I don't want to go any further because it's too much nectar. We keep it a little bit for every day. Are there any questions? Yes. That microphone is not on. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Thank you.
Maharaj, I have questions on verse number 25, 6.25 and 26 translation.
Is it Bhagavad-Gita or Srimad
Bhagavad-Gita. Bhagavad-Gita.
625?
625, which you quoted from 620.
Yeah, okay. Sanai Saner Uparamed.
Yeah, so 625 translation says, the last part says that thus the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should think of nothing else. And the self is a...
Small s.
I think it's... here it shows uppercase.
Oh, you have the uppercase?
Yeah, in the Veda base it shows uppercase.
Okay, so they corrected it. That means it's meditating on Krishna.
Okay.
If the small s would be themselves.
Yeah, because that was my next question, because the very next verse it says control of the self. Verse number 26.
Yeah, that's different.
So we treat it as uppercase.
No, uppercase means Krishna. Lowercase means the living entity.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
And
So in 25 it says mind should be fixed on the self.
I'm glad you noticed that. Because in this edition, which is an older edition, the S is small, and that's a mistake.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in Bhagavad-Gita, 2nd chapter, it says, Yada samharate chayam kurmo nagani vasarvasaha indriyan indriyartebhyas tasya pragya pratistita. One who's able to withdraw his senses from sense objects, as the tortoise draws its limbs within the shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. In other words, a devotee will see everything in the material world, right? But when he sees something that can potentially deviate his mind from Krishna consciousness, he immediately withdraws his senses from it. He doesn't keep looking at it. Because how does one fall down? Dahayato vishayam pumsa sangat teju bhajayate. While contemplating the objects of the senses, one develops attachment, and then it comes lust, and then comes bewilderment and loss of memory and so forth. So to be able to withdraw your senses is very important. Whenever there's something that seems attractive, but actually it's illusory. Okay?
Yes,
So the test of a yogi devotee, or self-realized soul, is that he's able to control the senses according to his plan. Most people, however, are servants of the senses and are thus directed by the dictation of the senses, instead of being directed by the dictation of Krishna and Guru. That is the answer to the question as to how the yogi is situated. The senses are compared to venomous serpents. They want to act very loosely and without restriction. The yogi, or the devotee, see, in other words, yogis and devotees are both able to attain perfection. The problem with the yogis, though, is that in Kali Yuga, their philosophy has been scrambled, right? And this whole idea of tattvamasi as being the primary vaikya has confused them. So when they actually get to the point of seeing Paramatma, they think, that's me. And then they want to merge into the body of Paramatma. So right at the last moment, everything they did comes to a failure.
Right.
Rather than that's me, that is my Lord, and I should surrender from that point on. Then they become a devotee, a pure devotee. Okay. The senses are compared to venomous serpents. They want to act very loosely and without restriction. The yogi, or the devotee, must be very strong to control the serpents. Like a snake charmer, he never allows them to act independently. There are many injunctions in the revealed scriptures. Some of them are do-nots, and some of them are do's. Unless one is able to follow the do's and the do-nots, restricting oneself from sense enjoyment, it is not possible to be firmly fixed in Krishna consciousness. The best example set herein is the tortoise. The tortoise can at any moment wind up his senses and exhibit them again at any time for particular purposes. Similarly, the senses of the Krishna conscious persons are used only for some particular purpose in the service of the Lord and are withdrawn otherwise. Arjuna is being taught here to use his senses for the service of the Lord instead of for his own satisfaction. Keeping the senses always in the service of the Lord is the example set by the analogy of the tortoise who keeps the senses within. Okay. So that's good that you pointed that out, that S should be capitalized, not small.
Yeah. And then in 28, it says self-controlled yogi. That's a lowercase s, because that means you're controlling yourself, not...
Yes. Let's take a look at that.
28.
28, yeah. Yogi Vigata Kalmasa. So yogi means one who is in touch with the Supreme Self. And Vigata means freed from kalmasa, all material karma. So thus the self-controlled yogi.
That's a lowercase.
Lowercase.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Right.
Yeah, they're, I mean, it's normal that they correct mistakes
Right. Yeah.
over time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much.